right. Welcome to Construction Leading Edge podcast. Today, we are happy to have Amy Rand joining us, and today is a special day. This is the first time I am actually going to be leading the podcast, and it's a day for the ladies. So, Amy Rand, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. And to introduce Amy, which I'll let her share a little bit more about herself. She is with Suncoda Construction from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and she leads their marketing and business development. And she and her team recently went through the SYCB program. So we're going to hear a little bit about her experience through that program and some of the results that she's had. But I also just want to talk to Amy about being a woman in construction and how she got into this industry and some of the successes she's had. So I'm really excited for today's conversation. And Amy, thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Yes. Well, let's dive right in and get to know you a little bit more. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how you got started in the construction industry?
Sure. So I started in marketing and design many years ago. And that was sort of my forte. It's what I enjoy doing. But then about 10 years ago, we ended up moving across the state, and my husband had already had the job with Suncoda, and he knew he was set. But I was looking for a job, figuring out what I wanted to do. And I ended up getting a job in marketing at an HVAC company. So I started from the HVAC standpoint of construction, so more of a specialty versus a general contractor. But I learned so much about the construction industry as a whole. It was phenomenal about, everything from finding projects to bidding to the sales aspect. And, in marketing for that position, I was putting together their proposals and reading a lot of technical stuff and then trying to make it user-friendly for the average Joe that didn't know a lot about HVAC. We worked a lot with, superintendents of schools. They don't know that much about HVAC, and I can't expect them to. Mm-hmm. So
you were kind of like a translator
in
many ways.
Like the technical translator to, the everyday, what we can all understand. So, And so I worked there for about 9 years, and then I came over to Suncoda here recently. My husband and I have owned Suncoda for about 6 years now, and my husband's always been in the construction industry. So just over the years, I've learned a lot from him too, as far as just how the day-to-day stuff goes, everything from how to cut lumber to assembling things to just some of the different aspects of owning a business and what some of those are. So
you dove right in with a couple of different angles, learning about construction.
Yeah. Can
you tell us a little bit more about your business specifically, about Suncoda Construction?
Yeah, we are a general contractor in the Sioux Falls, South Dakota area. Our sort of what we call our home territory is within about 100 miles of Sioux Falls. There's quite a bit of construction in that area, so we don't typically look too much further than that. We don't need to stretch to find projects. There's plenty in this area. We are really a booming area, and that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do everything from design build projects to hard bid and kind of everything in between. You name it, we can make it happen. We don't do any residential, though. We are strictly commercial general contractors.
Commercial.
Yep.
Awesome. Which is actually one of the reasons why I'm really excited to have you on, because I know many of our clients, not all of them, we have obviously commercial and trade contractors as well that work with us, but many of our clients are residential. And so I'm excited to pick your brain a little bit from a commercial standpoint and to hear a little bit more about your experience in that world as well. So just kind of repeating and going back to what you said. So you dove into the industry working for an HVAC contractor doing marketing,
yep.
Translating.
Yeah.
Your husband has always been in the industry, and now the two of you own the business, Suncoda Construction,
yep.
Correct?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. And so what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that construction business owners are facing today, and how have you and your husband stayed ahead of these challenges?
Man, I would say the biggest challenge that we all face, and it probably doesn't matter which industry you're in, but would be labor force. Just trying to find staff, and competent, qualified staff is even more challenging. But one of the sayings we have here is we're always trying to improve our team. If we find a really good candidate, we want to hire them, even if we don't have a super urgent need, or, if we find a superintendent and we can't use them tomorrow, that's okay. If we find a really good person, we just want to make sure that we grab hold and keep them instead of, oh, we don't have a position for you right now, so check back with us in 6 months. Because by then they've found somebody else and they don't want to jump ship after 6 months. So we're continuously hiring, we're continuously improving who we have here. And, we want good quality team players. So.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that you're always hiring. I think that's a really good strategy and a smart one too. You find someone who's going to be a quality player for your team. Why not bring them on now? Find the right spot for them to be able to take you where you want to be. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the tools specifically that we presented and shared with you in SYCB. And I'm sure the accountability chart probably played a little bit into this. So here you are, a business owner, and I know you've probably learned a lot of lessons owning this business, co-owning this with your husband. What lessons specifically have you learned or that stand out to you? And how have those informed your approach to leadership and entrepreneurship?
So I would say I'm going to have two main things. So one would be staff, like I just talked about. Staff is always changing. People come and go. You have to be ready for it. When you're surprised by it, it breaks your heart. So we've learned through some heartbreaking processes that we just have to be ready for it. 10, 20 years ago, it was really common for people to stay in a job or a career for 15, 20, 25, 30 years until retirement. That's just not the case anymore. And I wish I knew the statistic on it, but the average time that people stay at a job is so much shorter. So we just have to be ready for people to come and go way more quickly than in previous years. So that is challenging because, again, you're always looking for more help. And sometimes your favorite, longstanding, most knowledgeable employee goes somewhere else and you didn't see it coming. So that's definitely a challenge. The other thing I would say is communication. Communication is so critical, both on the client standpoint and the staff and employees. As it's just huge. We can talk about it a little bit later too, but we created several different documents and graphics that help us with those communications, whether it's expectations or, the process of how a project works from start to finish, those kinds of things. So it's been really helpful. Instead of just assuming everybody knows, because they've been around for 25 years, they should know by now. Well, with, the quicker turnover and stuff, we just have to be more diligent about getting that information to people sooner in their career and not assuming that they know it all too. So
I think that's part of a really strong onboarding, quite frankly, because even if they've been in the industry for a long time and they know how to do their job, they may not necessarily know how you want them to do their job.
Right. Everybody does things a little bit different. And, everything from time cards are different from one company to the next. So sometimes, we just had somebody stop in this morning and say, I don't understand how to do the time card. Can you help me? So it's not that everybody doesn't have a way of recording their time on a job, but they're all different.
And so how have you, with both of those things, how have you been able to pivot knowing that the workforce today is likely not going to stick around long term, like in the past, as you mentioned? What are some of the things that you guys have done that have made you an attractive employer, that your employees want to stay there? That's kind of the first part of the question. And the second part is, how have you been able to pivot when those changes happen and they happen more frequently than you're expecting?
Yeah. I would say our biggest pivot point is just presenting ourselves and marketing ourselves as a family-friendly employer who really looks out for the customer's best interest as well as our staff. We have probably a very unconventional work schedule for most construction companies. And a lot of people say, I'm tired of working the 50, 60 hours a week. I'm getting older, my bones are hurting, whatever the reason is. And we have and it's been this way since the company started 30 years ago. We work 7:30 to 4 Monday through Thursday and 7 to 11 on Fridays. So everybody gets a little time to themselves. When the company started 30 years ago, you needed time to go to the bank or appointments. Now things are open much longer and there are much more technical ways to get things done. But we've still kept that schedule. Everybody loves having a Friday afternoon off. If you're going out of town, you can just get going earlier. So it's been really fun to see people's eyes light up when we're, doing interviews and stuff when we talk about the schedule. So that's been pretty fun. And so we try to make sure that that's very evident in job postings and just focusing on family friendly and customer focused when we post on social media and our website and things like that.
I want to talk a little bit more about that because that is a very unconventional work schedule. How and when did you come up with this? How long has that been in place for your business?
It's been in business since day one. So 30 years we've been doing this schedule. I know the biggest question is, well, how do you get everything done in 40 hours a week? Yeah. So basically we do a lot of forecasting, figure out what we can accomplish with the staff that we have. We really try hard not to bite off more than we can chew. And again, that's also unconventional for a lot of construction companies. It's, I want every job that comes around, but our strategy is really take what we can do and do that well. We want to have really good quality, not just rush through a project and perform so-so. We want to just make sure that the customer has what they wanted in the end. But that family-friendly schedule really allows people to do good quality work, not be super tired on a job site, not be worn down too much. So it's beneficial for everybody involved. And that's really good. I love that aspect.
Have you seen your work efficiency increase with doing this? And I'm sure the morale has increased with doing something like this. Can you tell us a little bit about both of those things as well?
Yeah. So our efficiency is really good because people know that, okay, we have 9 hours a day to get these tasks done. And if I don't get them done, then I really have to work Friday afternoon. And I don't really want to do that. So they're very motivated by the schedule, which is also helpful. We don't hold it to rate of pay or bonuses as far as efficiency. We instill that you are capable of doing your job and here's your timeline. You in the field need to figure out how to get it done. So we try not to micromanage too much. Sometimes there's more questions than others on a project, but ultimately it's the superintendent's job to say, this is what we need to get done today, and this is how many people I need to come help me.
So you've really empowered your staff to do the job that you hired them to do.
Yep. And that we pushed that a little bit harder after we created our accountability chart as well. It helped streamline whose jobs are whose and where it falls for accountability. And
that's fantastic. And I'm sure that this plays into your philosophies of leadership, because you can't have something like that and you can't roll with something where there's that high level of trust and empowerment for your staff unless you have a personal philosophy on leadership. So I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about that?
I guess my personal philosophy on leadership is lead by example. Yes. I work hard. I do things as efficiently as possible. I communicate with everybody, even to the extent of responding with okay and thumbs up to text messages or thank yous and emails, just so people understand that I got the message. I think that's critical so that you're not left wondering, well, does she know what I'm talking about or not? Mm-hmm. So I think that's plays a big part for me. And I want to be a good leader by showing the strong skills that I have, whether it's the organization and my writing techniques, or I'm not even too good to go out to the shop and sweep up a little bit. Or yesterday I was looking out in the shop for something and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to need to clean that off because we need to get to that product and get it on site. Well, it's quite dirty at the moment. So I'm not too good for any of that stuff. So.
Yeah, I love that. Leading by example, be willing to roll your sleeves up and work
Yeah.
alongside everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes a long way.
In
People will
fact,
always, yeah, go
I was gonna
ahead.
say, in fact, Chris is actually on a job site today pouring concrete. Not something he normally does, but he and our estimator stepped up and said, the job's got to get done. We have some concrete experience. Let's take a crew over and get this done. We can pound it out in one day, be done, and be on our way to continue to proceed in the project.
That's awesome.
So,
I love that. Well, Amy, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to hear specifically about a project or an accomplishment that you are particularly proud of. And what did it take to achieve it?
well, I would say I haven't been at SunCoda terribly long, but I feel like I really accomplished a huge thing when I first started, and that would be taking the Systematize Your Construction Business class and developing our This Is How We Do It process book. It's been really helpful, again, for communication with both staff and clients. It has led to new things that we've developed as far as some onboarding stuff, as well as we recently added client offboarding. Not that, because another term I've heard was like a goodbye packet. Well, I didn't want to say goodbye forever.
Yeah.
So we call it offboarding, but it's, thank yous and testimonial request and, share us with people that a one-on-one testimony is huge. Referrals are huge. So there's a little gift that goes with it, and it's delivered with their O&M so that they kind of have everything as one big package at the end. So that's been really fun to add as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so now I want to dive into SYCB because I really want to talk a little bit more about a lot of the things that you did, because we give you guidance through this program, but you took a lot of these tools that we gave you and you just ran with them, including doing what you're just talking about. So I definitely want to talk a little more in detail about some of those things, but take us back. And I know you weren't specifically involved in all of the decision-making to join SYCB. I know that was more Chris, but I know being married to him, you probably are very aware of some of the challenges or frustrations or even the chaos that was happening. So can you take us back to that before SYCB, before you ever joined? What were things like at the business at that point in time?
I guess I would use the word stagnant, which is not a very positive word, but it's not terrible either. So we were kind of at just an even keel, even road, no major ups or downs, but we also weren't growing. And when Chris and I bought the business 6 years ago, our goal was to grow the business, grow the recognition in the community. And it was very hard to do that because it seemed like we were just doing what we've always done. And and I think lots of people have that, I know. And there are still aspects of our company that are like that. But we tried really hard to put together something that encompassed all aspects of a project or all aspects of the company, really. Everything from how we do bids to estimating to project management, how we go about doing all those different things. And then I created a ton of templates and checklists to go with each of those. And of course, my marketing background was thriving on that. And I think a lot of people laughed at me because they're like, why is everything so pretty? I'm like, wow, I can't help it. That's my specialty, and I don't get enough of it anymore. So things get kind of pretty. But I try to keep it friendly. So
I love so many things that you said resonate. And I think many people will probably relate to this, right? There's this frustration and this chaos, and it's just the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
The construction industry doesn't have a lot of innovation. If you think of industries across the last 100 years, things are pretty much the same that they've always been in this industry.
Yeah.
And what I think is so cool about what you have done and what you and Chris have done is not only did you buy the business and you were kind of going along that same road, just the way things always were, but you knew you wanted to be somewhere else. And you were trying to figure out that bridge to get you from where you were to where you wanted to be. And so then you joined the program. And again, I want to dive in a little bit more to some of the things that you did specifically that were very innovative, especially I think for a construction contractor. But I want to talk first, I want to hear a little bit more about some of that frustration beforehand. If you can kind of take us into the feeling and your mindset of what that frustration was like, or what some of the worst things were for you and for Chris in the business back then.
I think we just kind of felt like we were spinning in circles. We couldn't move forward. Tasks just weren't being done very efficiently. There was a lot of duplication, and none of that is cost effective. So not that money was the leading force behind this, but it was more about efficiency and, like I said, moving forward, growing the company. And we couldn't do that by being inefficient and not cost effective. So we just wanted to make sure we were making forward progress and not just spinning in circles and doing things the way we've always done them.
Awesome.
It was being creative and finding some new ways to do things.
Right. And so you joined the program.
Yep.
And at first it was just Chris, and he was here in the program. And then a couple of weeks into the program, you joined.
Yep.
And I started to have the chance to get to work with you. So was there one particular part of the program that you and Chris, or even just you alone, you were like, this is going to work. This is going to really help our business?
Yeah. So I would say it's definitely this is how we do it document. And I'm not sure. I mean, you can tell me. I don't know if that was sort of the main point of the entire class, or if there were other things that really were supposed to be the standout, but that was the one that I really just took it, grasped onto it, and ran. And Chris did not have the time to do that when we were at that time. I mean, it was a busy construction time. He was like, yeah, this is a good idea, but I don't have time to write this down. I don't have time to formulate anything. I can make some bullet points, but it is what it is, just sort of his standpoint. And over the years, they developed a few standard operating procedures, but it was very disjointed. Like, you could not do a task start to finish with their operating procedures. I mean, for example, one of them was how to create tabs for the binders for bidding. Well, it's not a terrible hard process, but yes, you need to know which tabs to make in which divisions that are necessary. But by our This Is How We Do It document, we were able to go from pre-bid to bidding something to getting those binders made to what's everybody's expectation on bid day. So, and that was huge. Not everybody in the company, as far as office staff, knew what their responsibility was that day. So every once in a while, we'd have somebody go to lunch when a bid was due at 1, and then there was nobody to look at the fax machine. Yeah, we're old school, still use faxes. Or answer the phone in a timely manner, or just those kinds of things. So it really showcased our expectations. And we did something similar with when we do our handoff meetings with superintendents. We also say, okay, project managers, here's what you're responsible for during the construction. Superintendents, here's what you're responsible for. Do you have any questions? Do you have anything to add? And at that time, they can certainly say, okay, this project manager doesn't want to do, I don't know, whatever aspect it is. Write the meeting minutes, we'll say. But the superintendent is willing to take that over. So we can kind of move those things a little bit, but it's just nice to have a starting point that's the same for every project of here's the expectations. Here's the list of what you need to do and keep track of.
Yeah. So what you're referring to, Amy, is we start with what we call the nail the handoff process. And you're kind of right on target with that. There's 3 main parts in this YCB program. We start with accountability chart, where we're really understanding what team do you need in place to take you where you want to be. Not necessarily currently the team you have, but what team do you need? And what are those roles and what are they accountable for? So you can see how that's very foundational to moving into what's going to be your process, specifically for the pre-construction processes, which is what you talked about. Yeah. And then from there, we provide what we call leadership systems, which are tools to help you hold your team accountable and to help them be successful in those roles. And what I love about what you just said with Nail the Handoff, which then becomes a document called This Is How We Do It. It is your operating procedure. It's how you do business. And it is often like kind of the highlight for many of our clients, because it's this time where their team comes together and they're able to all contribute to what this process is going to be and make it the very best process possible. And what you did with this, what I love about what you did, Amy, is you took all of what we provided as far as these tools to get you started in this, you really took it and made it your own. You completely branded it for your company. It became very much a part of the culture of your company, and it fit in perfectly with a commercial contractor.
Yeah.
So a bit of a background on me, I come from home building, large production builders, and very much tied into the customer experience. And so I know you and I had a handful of conversations about that. And how can you as a commercial contractor provide a great customer experience? Mm-hmm. Which many of our commercial contractors don't really even think about that. Quite frankly,
it's
many
not
of
their focus, that's for sure.
No. I mean, and even our residential, they often don't even really think about this. But I love that you took that and you thought, okay, well, who are my customers? And how can I make this a great experience for them so they know exactly what to expect with us? And you did such a phenomenal job of creating some documents that were not sterile and boring. They weren't a white Word doc with bullet points that check, sign at the bottom. This is legal. Tell us a little bit about some of the documents that you put together that really were well branded and that engaged with your clients and helped everybody know what to expect and how to create a great experience and process for your customers and internal customers too.
Well, like I said, I like to make things pretty. So that played probably a big part in why things got to be more graphic looking versus the sterile text on a page. Mm-hmm. So I remember writing one time, and I don't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was client expectations, because we were working with a client at the time where we were struggling a little bit with communication and what they were supposed to be knowing and doing and what we were supposed to be doing. It was just a little bit of a struggle in a design build project. Mm-hmm. And that happened to be the right timing in the SYCB program to talk about those things and bring it up. So I wrote an entire, 2 pages of sterile text on what to do and what not to do. In the end, I was like, well, this is terrible. But I had
no one wants to engage.
No, I had to do that as an exercise just to figure out what the main points were. Yeah. In the end, I ended up making a really nice looking graphic page that we all have in our offices now, and we've distributed to customers to kind of say, okay, here's what our staff is responsible for, and here's what your staff is responsible for. If there are any questions, this is what you need to know. And know that we're an open book. Ask all the questions you can come up with. Mm-hmm. Nothing is too silly or too dumb to ask. So nothing's too basic either. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I love that document. And just because this is an audible podcast, people aren't viewing anything right now. So I do want to clarify that when you say you make things pretty, you didn't make this flowery. And I mean, it was very on brand. This is a commercial contractor. And what Amy did is she took her brand and all the aspects of her brand and she made it fit with her brand. So I'm not talking about flowers and rainbows all over a paper. That's not what this was. But it was visually appealing, and it was something that someone would actually want to read and engage with versus, as we mentioned, a very sterile looking white piece of paper with bullet points. People just don't engage with that. And quite frankly, if that is how we're setting expectations with our customers, they're not even looking at it. They just aren't. Yeah. But what you did is she put together the company values, and then right next to it, aligned with the values, was what they could expect from SunCoda and what SunCoda should expect from their customers. Yeah. So it was very clearly outlined. It was in a way that was not threatening or legal or boring, but it was engaging. And tell us the results from that to what you had before. How has that changed how you've interacted with your customers?
Well, there was really nothing before. So before it was just sort of an audible, whatever they talked about during their progress meetings is what they knew about us and expectations. So very, very little. This document really helped us expand on that and have a more positive interaction with owners and clients. It, like you said, it showed our huge values that we strive towards. And then just broke down a lot of, here's how I'm going to help you with quality. That's one of our huge ones. Here's how I'm going to help you with quality, and here's how you can help us with quality. Be specific about what you want and what your needs are, how you're going to use it. Because if we don't know the why and how you're going to use it, we can't build it to what you need. And that was a huge two-way communication tool and really helped out the clients.
That's fantastic. And then from there, Amy, I know you took the "this is how we do it" process document and just completely transformed that for you and your business.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who aren't familiar, this is the internal process that we guide our clients to develop, so everybody on the team knows exactly what to be doing. Behind the scenes is what I would like to call that. So this is not necessarily something you're sharing externally with your customers, but it's how you're doing business so that they are having a good, smooth process.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of ties in with that document that Amy said earlier. It's setting those expectations with your customers, but then your team behind the scenes using this document knows exactly what to do to perform and to deliver and to make that as smooth as possible for everyone. So when we ended SYCB, you were in the process of wrapping that up. You definitely made some changes since then, and you were about to really present this to your team and say, hey, this is now the direction we're going. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and how that was received by your team and how things are running now versus what they used to be?
It's been such a positive experience and such a positive presentation to all our staff. They've so much appreciated it. Like I said, staff changes often and they're not here 20 years anymore. So getting that information to them as soon as possible was huge. Probably one of the favorite standpoints actually, and somebody requested last week because we forgot, is our handoff meetings. And after using the system just a little bit, we decided, you know what, we need to do 2 handoff meetings. First one with our estimator to project manager, because project manager needs to know, okay, were there any agreements made during the bidding phase? Or, what do we do about this? Or is there money in the budget for this? So that was an important conversation to have with those 2 groups and just making sure that everybody's on the same page. Which contracts were selected, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then right before the project starts, we have another handoff meeting with the project manager and superintendent. That meeting is also hugely valuable because, again, it's transferring those messages of, oh, hey, the dirt contractor is going to dig in this as long as it can happen at the same time that they're on site. If it can't happen at the same time, then you need to, get another contractor to do this. But that's not written anywhere. That's not in the plans. That's not in their contract. It's not a written thing, but it's one of those, hey, we'll do this for you, no problem. As long as we don't have to remobilize. So there's no other way that those messages get passed except by who's doing this? So we try to be proactive, and those meetings are so proactive about just getting everybody on the same page. We really strive for, that meeting starts with a job summary, as basic as it can get between owner, what the actual project is, what are some of the major subcontractors, what's our scope of work, so the superintendent should by now know what the scope of work is. But once in a while, things move quickly, or a superintendent has been on a different project for a while, but then they need to pick this one up without much of a gap in between to learn about it. At the end of the day, we're trying to give the superintendent as much information as anybody in the company knows. Previously to this, several years ago and up until, 6 months ago or a year ago, the superintendent knew the least about the project when they started. That's tough. I can't imagine being a superintendent going on site to a, $10 million, $20 million project and going, well, let's do this. I don't really know what I'm doing, but we'll figure it out. So we love that we've been able to transform them into knowing as much information as anybody else or more. During those handoff meetings with the superintendent, we do a page flip on the plans, making sure that they know what's going on, answer any questions. One that came up this week was, well, how are we going to dig power in through a masonry wall? Well, we're going to need to figure that out. Or we need a change order on this already. So where's that at? What contracts are missing? Anything like that. Just where are their holes? Where are their questions? What needs to happen on site? And we made so many templates that help with meeting minutes, owner meetings, pre-construction meetings. And those have all been super helpful. I love being able, we have a newer project manager, and I love being able to say, hey, there's a template for that. It's literally got about every question you can think of for a pre-construction meeting. If you don't need it in there, delete it out. But there's so many things to think about, and you might not think of all of them on your own without some sort of a brainstorming list. Mm-hmm. So those have been really successful and helpful. It seems like our subcontractors also know a lot more about the project and the process before they start. They're talking about where's the concrete clean out way before the project starts, instead of when the concrete truck is there and going, oh, where do you want me to clean out at? So, I mean, it's little things, but they all add up to be a much more effective, efficient process.
Oh, gosh, absolutely. And one of the things that I call it a Toddism, but he says, how can you make this the last time you do this? And you really took that advice and ran with it, specifically talking about these checklists and these templates and all the things that you've created. You have made it pretty much the easiest way possible for every one of your project managers for one of your trades to know exactly what to expect on a project when they're working with you. And I love that you have also decided that in your process, you need 2 different handoffs. Yeah. And these are opportunities for everybody to ask all the questions they possibly need to. So when that job starts, you have everything and it's done. Yep. And that is ideally what we want to see happen for all of our clients. Yeah. It's a bit of work up front, especially if you've never done this, especially if you need to create this whole entire process, which I know you had some things in place, but you didn't have it to the extent you have now.
No, not at all.
But I would imagine that you would say that it was worth all of the effort that you put in for these last few months.
Yes. In fact, Chris did reviews with everybody at the end of last year, as far as all the staff. And he said every single person said that they appreciated this process and all the things that it's done for the company. At first you're always concerned, well, do people want more meetings? Do people want more checklists, more forms, whatever? But in the end, it has made us so much better and so much stronger that everybody appreciates it. They see the value in it. They see the value in just all the pieces of it, not necessarily just their scope of work. If I'm a superintendent, I might not necessarily care about what happens in the estimating phase, but now we're way more of a team. The team aspect has gotten really strong, and everybody knows what everybody else is doing. I don't have to be an expert in estimating, but I love that I know how the process works.
Right. And there's a clear line between each of those different roles as well. Each person knows exactly how to be successful. I want to go back to the beginning of our conversation when we were talking a little bit about how there's a pretty high turnover and people aren't sticking around like they used to. Since you've implemented a lot of these things, and specifically these conversations that you said Chris had toward the end of the year, have you had has that changed the morale of your team? Have you had folks leaving and maybe in the same amount as before? Have you seen a difference in that at all? I'm curious.
I don't know that people are leaving any more or less than they had in the past, but I think that those that we have now are really good, really strong individuals, and I think they will stay longer just because they have the tools they need to be successful. Another one of our major goals is, every few months we ask them, what tools do you need to be successful? I can't expect you to do a good job if I don't give you the right tools. So what do you need? And I think that builds the morale within the company. It builds the team aspect. They want to work together because they understand and they know where things are at.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell me, after you've gone through this program and it's now been a few months, so you've had some time to really start to implement some things. And I know you're not done with all of that necessarily, but how is life different for you now? How are things different for you and Chris, for your team? What's different?
I think there are less questions overall as far as, well, what's next? How do I do this? We've really spelled out in as much detail as we possibly can with links to all the documents on the server, and here's all the checklists. We try to make it really easy as far as finding what you need. We have some pretty specific folders as far as, okay, this is what you need to use when you start a new project. Copy this folder, put it here, rename it, and that has all of your templates in it for the most part. It's either a template or a shortcut to a template. So, and I also created a ton of templates, and some of the forms that existed previously, I made them into templates so that when you open them, you're either prompted for questions to easy fill in, or, no one's trying to save over the template with their changes, and that happens everywhere. So I just wanted to make sure they were all templates and not just a plain Word document that somebody could save over on accident after they made some changes and lose some of the essential template features.
Right. Oh, you've just made it so much easier for everybody.
Yeah. That's my goal. My goal is to make it easy.
Make it easy. Where's that easy button, right?
Exactly. I need one. I need one on my desk.
I think you are the easy button. You're making everything easier for everybody. That's so great. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more. You had mentioned your did you call it your offboarding?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. This is the first I've heard about it. I'm curious what that entails and how what experience you're creating for your customers.
Yeah. So we have a couple that are ready, and I'm waiting on O&Ms to finish before I can get them out. But it's essentially just a guide or a document that says, we appreciate working with you. Here's what we did, and some fun statistics. Again, I like to make things kind of fun and still, not super flowery, but in a way that is very branded. Right. The whole document is very branded. Our logo is a hexagon, so there's lots of hexagons in this document just to tie things together, using a lot of orange, which is our corporate color. So things like that really tie it all together. But it's just a nice sending off piece. So it'll be bound in a thermal binding, so it'll be presented very well. Along with that, we have these beautiful wood boxes with some gifts inside, and it has our logo on the top of it, laser etched in. They will get their O&Ms, any keys, any other things that need to be given to them at the time that we want to sort of close out the project and say, I hope you enjoy your new facility or your building or whatever it is. But we're always here for help. We're here for more questions, things like that. So one of the parts that I like the most, and sometimes it's challenging, but I have one page in there that talks about, here's how long we spent in the design phase, here's how long we spent in the construction phase, and here's how long your warranty is. It's just a fun infographic for the most part, saying, here's what we did and here's how long it took us. And things that I felt like were taking a ton of time in design, when I actually put the numbers together, I was like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. Time is a little bit warped in our heads, and it feels like, oh, it was in design forever and the construction took forever. But in all actuality, they're pretty reasonable numbers. So
yeah. Well, and that time up front is worth it. It reduces the time spent in construction significantly.
Absolutely.
Which is really cool. I love that you did that. I'm often talking about how can you find ways to wow your customer?
Yep.
And they don't have to cost anything. Something as simple as that.
Right.
You're wowing your customer. You're showing, once again, you're reaffirming that they chose the right contractor to go with.
And
right? You're reaffirming that sell.
8 pages. So it's a very short document. It's not like it's going to take you an hour to read. It's like a 5-minute, maybe a 5-minute flip through, because there's a lot of graphics, a lot of pictures. I also really like to include pictures from the job site. Things, during construction or upon completion. And sometimes I'm taking pictures from daily logs that, the superintendents are taking. So I have to do a little bit of editing on those. But it's a fun thing to have in there so that they can really see the perspective of the contractor of what they saw and what they visioned during the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to kind of go back again. So once again, we're talking about commercial construction here.
Yeah.
I am guessing that not many contractors are doing what you're doing, specifically with an offboarding gift, even the expectations. Mm-hmm. How have you seen your engagement with your clients change since you've started to implement many of the things that you've created?
I think we have better relationships in general. We're much more open book, and the customers feel that too. Mm-hmm. They don't feel like, oh, I can't ask because I'm going to get scolded for asking this, or I'm going to get chewed out because I didn't understand this. We're just very inclusive. And it's more of a two-way street than I hired a contractor. Now they're going to go do this and I'm just going to sit back until it's done. We want to make them part of the process. We want their feedback. I don't know of any other contractors that are quite as team oriented with the owners as we are.
Yeah.
Unless they're forced to by, a government project. But I feel like we have a lot more friends as our customers, which has been really fun.
Yeah, it's those relationships. That's key, and that's fantastic. You and I had communicated over email a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things you said is something like, "I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm so proud of what I've done." And man, I immediately was like, "You shouldn't be embarrassed at all. You should 100% be proud of everything that you have done because it's awesome." And I wish that there were visuals that we could share with everybody right now because what you've done is pretty impressive. It's very beautifully put together. It is pretty, if we want to use that word, but it's extremely on brand. It's perfectly suited for a commercial contractor. And I can only imagine the experience that your customers and clients are experiencing, as well as your internal customers, which are your employees. I'm sure all of that has shifted in a positive way. And I look forward to talking to you again in another 6 months or a year to hear how that is even improving even more. So great job on all of that, Amy.
Process, which is awesome.
Yeah. And it should be, right? Yeah. Business is never a one and done and we get to reach a destination and we're finished. It's always a continual looking at things and improving consistently. So well done. Kudos to you, you and Chris and everything you've done. Yeah, it was a pleasure, of course, to be able to coach you through the SYCB program and then to see all of the progress that you guys have made and to engage with a lot of the things that you created. You absolutely should be proud of that, Amy.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. I want to shift gears just a little bit here since the ladies are taking over today. And both of you and I have been in construction for a bit. And it's no surprise or secret that this is a male-dominated industry. So I'm just curious how your experience as a female business owner in this industry, how has that shaped your approach to leadership and business strategy?
I think it's really made me be strong and confident in what I know. As soon as you start to waver on, I'm not totally sure, or I think, then people start to doubt you. But be strong in what you know. I swear, us women actually know a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. So be strong in that. At the same time, don't be afraid to ask questions when you don't know or understand something, because it's not a big deal. And sometimes we overthink that, I don't want to ask this. I don't want to sound stupid in front of, don't do it in front of a big group, but those one-on-one conversations, people are always happy to help and always happy to help you grow in your knowledge. So the biggest thing, especially if you need to propose a new idea or a process, being super strong and confident in what you're doing. Don't ever ask, is this okay? This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. If somebody has feedback, they'll let you know. Don't worry. The male-dominated world is very vocal about letting you know. But the stronger you can present it, the more buy-in that they're going to give you. So, just be strong and confident is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would absolutely second that. I think it's interesting as you listen to some of the language that women just tend to use in general. There's a lot of apologies and a lot of questions versus just having a statement and saying thank you for your patience versus I'm sorry. It's just those little things that I think tend to really drive that confidence, not only for the woman speaking it, but for those around you.
Yeah.
And that it sounds like that's been a really good approach for you. And that's been helpful for you in your career.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Very much.
Is there other advice that you would give to women who are interested in this industry or who are currently in the industry?
Advice? Man. I guess I would say if you're not in the industry, but wondering about it, give it a shot. A couple reasons. There's so much more to it than being on the job site pouring concrete or being the superintendent overseeing things. There are so many aspects of a business. A construction business is just like any other business. You need somebody to do the accounting. You need somebody to do human resources. You need somebody to do marketing, sales, customer relations. All those things are super important. And Men are fitted for those as well, but I think women are a huge, great fit for any and all of those. So, and of course, we'd make great superintendents too, because we have a lot of critical thinking skills and efficiency built into it. So there's just so many ways to be involved. But if a superintendent position makes you very nervous, which it would for me, because I don't know if I want to be responsible for that, but there's definitely a niche for me. And
yes,
I try to embrace it. So yeah, it's been really fun I suppose I've been in construction industry for about 10 years, and the stuff I do varies so widely. One other aspect that I really love about my job is getting to plan events for staff, for customers, any of those, and love event planning. Also a weird quirk about me, but I love event planning. So as soon as I get to plan something like that, I'm always like, yay, let's do this, and get really excited about it. And that just helps everybody get excited about it.
Right.
So
yeah, that helps to fuel that positive culture.
Yeah, it's been huge in the culture changes over the last year here at SunCoda.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said all of those things, Amy, because the thing that's interesting is men and women, like our brains literally are different. The way that we view things, the way that we process things are different. The ideas that we bring to the table are different. And that is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
And, when everyone thinks the same, no one thinks. And so that is why having some of that diversity in thought and in the way that we process and in the way that we approach things is so powerful. And I agree with you. I think there's certainly a place for women in this industry, and that we can enhance things and make it so much better in many ways, along with our male counterparts. I think this is one of those things where we get to lock arms and just make everything better because we bring such diverse of ways of approaching things. Yeah. I'm curious. So had you had any specific challenges as a woman in this industry, and how did you overcome them?
I would say when I started in the industry, my biggest challenge was just lack of knowledge. I could understand a lot about the general construction world. My husband had been in it for several years, and you just pick up things over time. But I specifically started in the HVAC industry, and that was a challenge. I mean, I knew what an air conditioner was, but that's not what they call it in the commercial world. I knew what a furnace was, also not what they call it in the commercial world. So I had to learn everything. And I tried to ask as many questions as possible. And I definitely formed relationships with certain people that I felt comfortable asking what I would say the dumb questions. And so I turned to them for lots of things just to help me learn over time. I Googled tons of things to, what's an air handler? Well, it's pretty basic in their world, but I didn't know, so I had to Google it. I also just paid a lot of attention to conversations that were happening around me. They definitely had nothing to do with marketing. But when I could hear the project managers talking with each other about, okay, what are we going to do about this project? And how does this work? And we need these types of equipment on this site. I was able to just pick up lots of things, different parts of the boiler system and what those parts are versus what are the parts of an air system. Those were huge. Just listening to others. Anytime I was in meetings with any of the guys that, knew lots about the industry, I just tried to absorb what I could. And it helped me speak the lingo, be able to write about it. During my time over there, I had to create a whole new website. That's really challenging when you don't know the lingo or the language and what to say about each area. It was a big, diverse company, and we had a lot to talk about. And it was a little bit of a struggle when I started. So I did a lot of research during that process.
Wow. Good for you, Amy. It is. It's like a whole new language. And similarly, I actually grew up in the industry. My dad was a contractor. And so I was out on the job site swinging hammers and doing all those things. So I had a pretty basic knowledge of things, but I learned to listen a lot too, and to ask a lot of questions and to learn as much as I possibly could. Because what I found, and it is a bit unfortunate that there are some biases, but this is the nature of humans, right? We can get angry about it, or we can maybe not embrace it, but we can recognize that these are apparent. These are going to happen in the world. And how am I going to manage around it? Mm-hmm. So I would often show up with a new role or a new position. And I felt like I had to prove my knowledge like 3 times more than any other guy that walked on the job site. Yep. And that was frustrating. Mm-hmm. But, I started to kind of play games with it. It kind of became a game for me. So I wouldn't say much when I would show up and just kind of follow around and mirroring and walking around and kind of noticing things. And they'd be talking and doing all these things. And then suddenly I'd pipe into the conversation and all the heads would start turning. And they're like, she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
I just chose to laugh about these things or to use them as coaching opportunities to engage with my team, because I wanted to be a team. I didn't want to be the one on the outside. I didn't want to feel like somehow I was different or, unfortunately, I think so in today's world, there's a bit of animosity there too. And that's not going to serve anything. And so I think it's finding ways that we can show up and show our value and also have fun with the realities of some of these biases, because they'll happen. I want to actually ask a follow-up question. So I asked the question, advice for women. So for the men in the industry who are employing women and are working with women, what advice would you give to them?
Give us a chance. Again, we know a lot more than you think we know. And we know a lot more than we give ourselves credit for.
Yes.
I think we see things differently. We're a whole new perspective. So give us a chance to present our aspects and our perspective of those things. Sometimes I think women have a better end result in their head. We want to know, or we want to be assured of the customer's taken care of, their problem is solved, whether it was a leaky roof or needed to expand their production facility. Mm-hmm. We have the end result in mind, and then kind of take our steps backwards from there to put together a good plan.
Mm-hmm. Very detailed.
Yes. Detailed, efficient, organized. I think sometimes men just start at the beginning. We need to build a building, and how are we going to do it? So it's just a different perspective. And we just want to keep the customers happy. I mean, that's what we're here to do.
Yes. Yeah, I love that advice. Give us a chance.
Yeah.
And one thing that is actually triggering me, we had a group call yesterday for the Systematize Your Construction Business group. And they were talking about this nail the handoff process and how sometimes you actually need to ask people to speak up. Mm-hmm. And, these are all very alpha males, very outspoken. And they're like, I can't imagine that someone wouldn't just speak up.
Yeah.
But, now I'm thinking back to that conversation, and I think, if you're the only woman in a room with a lot of alpha males, a lot of times you have a lot of great things that you want to share, but you might be a little intimidated to speak up.
Yeah.
And so this might be a good opportunity for some of your male counterparts to say, hey, Amy, do you have any thoughts on this? What are your ideas? That's something that's very easy that we can all do. And this isn't just men, this is women, or excuse me, this isn't just men. Women can also do this, but invite some of those that maybe appear not as confident in the situation, invite them into it. Mm-hmm. Ask them their opinion, ask them for their ideas. I think that goes a long way, especially if you look around in that boardroom, and I'm sure you've experienced this. Probably 90% of my career, I was the only woman in a room.
Yes.
Often.
Yep.
I learned to navigate that really quickly and to do that in a successful way. But there are times that I look around and I'm like, ooh, I'm a little intimidated here. So just having someone else there that kind of helps to be an ally for you, I think is helpful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share related to women and being a woman in construction?
The construction industry is going to ebb and flow as far as the market goes. Sometimes it's a really good, heavy demand market. Sometimes it's not. But I really think the amount of women in construction is going to continue to grow and to flourish. Mm-hmm. Our jobs are going to be evolving over time. And I think that we'll play a huge, important part. I mean, we already do play a huge, important part, but I think it's going to be expanding a lot over the course of the next 10, 20 years.
I think so. I think it's a great industry to grow with. And, we're talking about innovation and what you did to innovate your company. I think there's a lot of opportunity, not just for women, but for everybody. to jump into this industry and to innovate and to make it even better. So I think it's a great opportunity for everyone, and would invite everyone to take a look at this, specifically women.
Yeah.
I want to just ask you a couple of closing questions about being a business owner. So if there's someone who is considering wanting to start a business in construction, let's see here, and you could ask them one question that they would really need to think about, what do you think that question would be?
For sure, it would be, what's your why? Start with, why are you doing this? Why are you wanting to start a company? And what do you hope to accomplish with it? Again, and maybe it's just me, but I think women tend to start with the end result in mind and work backwards. And I think that's a huge benefit in creating your business model and how you want to do business, what strategic plan you have, what specific market or niche you're in, but kind of working backwards from the end goal. So why do you want to do what you want to do?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. A simple question, but a really powerful one.
Yep.
That's great, Amy. One other thing, and I think you probably have a great answer for this, but what is one specific part of your business that's working well? Something you feel like you cracked the code on and that you would be willing to share here?
I'm going to say creativity, which encompasses so many things for me, but creating the "this is how we do it" document, the nailing the handoff, those handoff meetings, the whole process that I learned through Systematize Your Construction Business has been phenomenal. And I was able to use my creativity to do lots of things in that, as far as making just different processes to creating documents. And the whole goal of it was for the company to be more efficient, for everybody to be more efficient. And I think some creative strategies helped us get there. And along with that, being creative, I am a pretty good critical thinker. I try to don't just present a problem, but here's a solution or a possible solution. I want to take part in discussions about them. I don't want to just say, here's what we're going to do. I like to, kind of problem solve together, but typically men and women are going to come up with different answers in that problem solving scenario. And I love that I can, bring my point of view into that.
Love it. I love that you said being creative and having creativity. One of the things, specifically when we were talking about the team session for Nail the Handoff, one of the things that I often encourage clients to do is welcome any crazy idea, idea at all. Just open it up, because what will happen is people are going to start throwing out some wild stuff, and it's very creative, right? And they're not going to be things that will actually stick, but it gets that creative juice flowing. It gets your creative mind thinking in a different way, and it will open up so many more possibilities than the typical, this is just how we've always done it.
Right.
And you bringing that creative, fresh, new energy into your company has shifted things significantly. And again, I can't wait to see how things progress for you and for Chris and for your company. I'm excited to talk to you in another 6 months or a year and see how things are moving along. But thank you for that. That's really great advice, Amy. If people wanted to connect with you here as we wrap up, if people wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way to do that?
You can email me at amy.rands@suncodaconstruction.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Those are probably the two best ways to get a hold of me. You can also check out Suncoda Construction on LinkedIn or Facebook. So those are some good ways to get in touch.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Amy. I very much appreciate it. Again, you should 100% be proud of everything you've done. It's very impressive. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
You are welcome.